important for us to be proactive to meet with the buyers, or I'm sorry, to talk to the buyers, to let them know exactly what's going on throughout the entire process.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what you've been seeing go by on the screen a little bit are some of the materials that JC was kind enough to share with us. And some of these materials are the marketing of the homes themselves. So as you can see, some of them are included as a standard. And then as we go through some of them are the options, right? And so you can say, you know, did you know this is included? Did you know that we can make your home smart? Did you know that we can add things to your home? And you'll notice that these are all co-branded. And so it's not just about HomePro selling its name, but it's about extending the brand of the home buyer, of the home builder, of the home builder as well. And so it is a true partnership. Part of the importance in the way that these technology services get sold is that the home buyer feel comfortable with the decisions that you, the home builder, have made for them. Like JC said, your average home buyer is not meeting with the plumber, right? Not meeting with the HVAC guy, not meeting with the electrician, more than likely, or even the person putting in the pool. But they're almost certainly meeting with the integrator. And so the importance of that relationship, that integrator has to not only represent themselves well, but they have to represent the builder well also. And that goes back to how you choose your integrator and what kind of services you're looking for based on the type of homes that you're putting together.
And if we could just maybe touch on this for a brief second, because when we're meeting with the buyers, it's more of a lifestyle conversation that we have with them. What are your interests? What's important to you? And then we can kind of, we'll have the rest of that consultation, based around some of their interests. But we've also come up with some things, and as you'll see here, even coming out of the pandemic, we've realized just how important the network is. I know that's fairly obvious, but it was certainly highlighted that you need a stable network, and depending on if somebody works at home, if they like to listen to music, these are some things that we really focus on, and spending time outdoors is in Texas, maybe not in the summer, but most of the time it's important, in Texas. So we like to, highlight some of those things when we're speaking with the buyers, obviously.
So that lends itself sort of to the conversation about options, right? So now we've made the standards decisions, and we've met with the builder, and we've come up with a program. Talk to me a little bit about the idea of do you just throw everything against the wall and hope for the best, or how does the decision go about being made about which options will be available in which installations?
Yeah, it varies. We certainly will have done our homework, knowing which builder that we're talking to, and we'll structure those conversations based on what style of home somebody's building. We don't want to offer, the absolute basics to a more luxury production builder, and vice versa. We don't want to offer the world to maybe to a first-time buyer. So we'll be strategic in how we present those options. We always work with the purchasing managers or the vice presidents of sales to structure some of those discussions. And even these pieces that you see here and other pieces, it's a collaborative discussion that we have with our building partners to say, this is what we think will work, this is what we've seen in this community, in this neighborhood, in this market. And when we're in 4 different markets. We're in Dallas, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. Question here. Yes, sir.
Yes. The question is whether or not we have any demographic data or some statistical data about what options are popular within each demographic.
Yeah, let's see. The short answer is yes. We do have some data that we can look at, and we'll know when we go into a neighborhood or when we're talking to a builder, more or less what that type of buyer, what they might spend some of their upgrades on. So we do collect that data. We have that information. And like I said before, when we're bidding these things out, we know pretty much what we're gonna make on upgrades, and it's all based on just looking at data, analyzing, and making sure that we're making the right decisions there.
So there are, to answer that question further, there are a couple of organizations out there in the world that do track this kind of thing. I happen to be a member of a number of them, so I'm speaking from direct experience, but the first one is the Consumer Technology Association, right? So CTA is a group based out of DC. They represent the majority of technology organizations around the world. They actually do a biannual survey of the demographic of new home buyers and what kind of technology and things they want in their homes. And there's also obviously you're probably all members of the NAHB. The NAHB does this work in conjunction with CTA as well to sort of break down some of those demographics. Obviously that data is very geocentric, right? So our friend in New Hampshire is probably not going to do as much with outdoor kitchens as our friends in Arizona, just because it gets cold there, from what I understand. But there are all kinds of other demographics and organizations that are actually doing those types of studies, and it's a really great question. As you go into a new community, there are organizations that can help you sort of parse through the data and understand what's most important. Some of the sessions that we're going to be talking about over the next couple of days will highlight things as well. 2 years ago, networking was sort of an afterthought. Very few builders were putting networking in as a standard. But now we had this little pandemic, maybe you've heard about, where we all had to work from our homes for the last couple of years. And so networking became incredibly important. And most of the home builders that I work with put home networking now in as a standard, because most home buyers, when they're looking at the competitive nature of what to buy, your biggest competitor is not the other new home down the block, right? What's your biggest competitor? The resale market. And so what are the advantages of a new home versus an old home? Things like integrated technology, things like integrated speakers, entertainment, outdoor kitchens, and things like solar and transfer switches and battery backup and EV chargers and things like that. I happen to live in a townhouse, for instance, that if I want to put an EV charger in, my high voltage box, my DMARC of my high voltage happens to be behind my townhouse. My garage is in the front of my townhouse. You can imagine, it's the first time the electrician came out and he sort of looked at me and went, well, this may take a little bit. Now, when they were building these, had they brought the high voltage out to the garage, then it would have been much easier for us to put in a EV charger. These days, architects, designers, decorators, builders, everybody who's involved does just that. And so if I'm a home buyer and I'm looking at the difference between a resale, one of the townhouses that me and my community friends all live in, versus a new one, because they're building them like crazy up the block, the first advantage is they come with EV chargers. So it's things like that to understand the demographic, very important. I would completely agree with you. And there are organizations and there are consultants out there, such as myself, who can also help you sort of figure that out. But partnering with a strong integrator, they're going to know your local market intimately. All right, JC will tell you.
Sure, and
right?
just to piggyback on something you said with the networking, we have something, we call it a Wi-Fi guarantee. And we've partnered with some networking folks, Legrand and some other products such as that, and we'll actually go in and look at the diagrams, look at the network of the home, the diagrams, let's say, and we'll draw a heat map and show that to the builder or the homeowner to let them know that if they buy one of these homes, there's going to be a Wi-Fi guarantee. And through our manufacturer, they've guaranteed it, we'll guarantee it, and that's been a huge seller for us as well. And then we don't do solar, but we'll get it ready for solar. And we certainly will install EV chargers, and we do that since we're an electrical company. And those two things, like you said, are becoming much more popular these days.
You say you're an electrical company or low voltage company?
Both.
So they're lucky enough. Now they are a rare breed. I won't lie to you. They are a rare breed where they have both high voltage and low voltage under the same roof. There are certain states where you can't do that. It's because the IBEW is a powerful lobby. But in the places that you can, it is definitely an advantage. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And JC is lucky enough that HomePro does provide both of those services. So as we look at various options and the marketing thereof of the options, You may come across certain terms that are going to be more or less meaningful based on the demographic that you're selling to. One of the ones that I absolutely hate, and I've been in this business for 30 plus years, is smart home. I hate the term smart home. We haven't installed a smart home ever. Because does anybody live in a home that knows before you do what you would like the temperature to be? Does anybody live in a home that knows before you do who's walking in the front door and what music and environment they would like to be in? Chances are, no. A smart home knows those things. What we do is we sell home control. Yes, everybody here has a talking box and you can say, hey Google or Alexa or whatever their names are, turn on the light, make it warmer, make it colder. Who won the baseball game? That's home control. That's not smart home. So, how do you make a home smarter? Through the installation of these devices. The next question I have for JC is, how does the builder participate in those options? Is it just about selling the options, or are there services that they can participate in the future, recurring revenue or other homegrown services that are now built into the home post-close? How do they participate in that?
Sure, yeah. And before we get onto that, I have talked to some builders, and when we pitch them some of these ideas in smart homes, I've had a builder or two tell me, JC, I can't even build a dumb house. How am I going to build a smart house? And so, you're right. Some of those homes aren't that intuitive right now, but I'm telling you, in the future, maybe not 5 years, maybe we'll just say down the line, there are homes that are going to be like that. When you walk in, and I tend to not even to say this, but with AI coming out, there are going to be some homes that will know that. They'll know your patterns. You can walk in and just say hello home, and it'll do all those things that you're talking about doing. And the reason I say that is, even as we talk about more technology and in the integrated home, a lot of times we take our cues from the automobile industry, where you can't buy a vehicle these days without walking into a vehicle and just being overwhelmed with the technology in it. And so we see that as we see the home eventually getting to that point. And I'm a big Texas Rangers fan, and certainly was tied into the World Series, but there was a series of commercials with Derek Jeter, and he bought a brand new Grand Cherokee, and the entire commercial was about the experience. They didn't talk about the V8 or the backup cameras or anything. It was all about the technology, the experience, the sound, and the ease and the comfort of it. And so that's where we're getting to eventually with, I think with smart home.
I agree with you. I find it amazing that nobody would consider buying a new car that doesn't have keyless entry and push-button start, but plenty of people still expect that when they take possession of their new home, they get these little mini swords, these keys, right?
Yeah.
They get a little keychain, and it's the ceremony of the keys, and we still call it that. Why, right? If you would expect it from your car, which you're not going to have for more than a few years, and you're not going to live in, hopefully, for very long, why would you expect your home that you are going to keep for possibly decades not to contain these kinds of technology pieces? And that's something that we as home builders and as integrators have to help the home buyers understand, because their level of expectation is pretty low, but it's getting higher all the time. And so there's an opportunity for us to sort of differentiate ourselves.
And Avi, if you can go back to the previous screen, I do want to point this out, because the marketing and the communication to your buyers, that one, it's so important. There are a few communities where we install smart homes in all of them, but a lot of times the buyer doesn't even know what they're getting in their home. Either the salesperson or someone throughout the process just hasn't informed them. So it's really important that if you do offer some of these great things, you've got to let your buyers know just how much really great stuff you're putting in those homes. Otherwise, it's just wasted. And then I did want to answer your question about how we partner with the builders or other things that we do. There are some programs that we have out there. there are some rebate programs that we participate in, both for, on the security side and using some, if we partner with some brand names, there are some rebates out there that we always want to share with our builders.
So that actually brings up another interesting topic. Who here takes advantage of any of the grants, whether local or federal, that are available for technology installations in their homes? Nobody? Oh, all right, so I got 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that's a reasonable number. Okay. For those of you not familiar, so 45L grants are federal grants that allow for money to come back to you to pay for some of the energy efficiency technologies that you're installing in your homes, whether it be the HVAC system or the solar panels or some of the safety equipment. But the 45L is a very powerful program. There are actually companies out there that will take your plans and submit them and get the grants for you, and they take a little bit off the top, but then you get the majority of that grant money. And that's a way, again, that you can partner with a home integrator to reduce your out-of-pocket up front, right? There's a certain amount of technologies you have to include in the home as a standard. That's a way to reduce the amount of money that you have to lay out, especially those of you in California where you have to put a lot of things in as a standard. And it gives you an opportunity then to make more profit on options because your sort of cost through the door is considerably lower than it would be without these grants. And so I would welcome you. I gotta look at the vendor. In the spring, one of these vendors was actually here because they're one of my partners. I don't know if they're here this time, but I'll find out. By the time we meet again, I will get that information for you. So I don't know if you help participate in some of that 45L money.
Not yet, but
we should
we'll
talk.
Look at it. Yeah, let's talk.
Okay. So this is an interesting slide, and it was very interesting that you put it in here. You'll notice that some of HomePro's partners date all the way back to the 90s. Now, full disclosure, I was an integrator from the mid-90s to the mid-aughts, the mid-2000s, whatever you want to call that, which was really the wave that a bunch of us rode. It was when home technology was first coming out. Structured wire was a brand new thing. We had the first wireless alarm systems to be able to put in. But I thought that this was very interesting in the fact that these guys, since they've been doing it for so long, have had some very specific partners. You'll notice they've got some very big names and some very big years. I don't know if is anybody's name on this list that's in this room? See that? But you'll notice that there was sort of a sweet spot about 5 years ago where a whole bunch of builders have jumped into this. What's interesting, and no offense to JC whatsoever, but what's interesting to me as sort of a consultant on the outside looking in is a number of the names that jumped in 2018 jumped out in 2021 and 2022. And that's an opportunity for those of you in the room who are savvy enough and smart enough and brave enough to be here with us this week, because you'll notice that there is opportunity there because the big guys don't always do this anymore. Whenever there is fluctuation in the market, typically the first thing that gets thrown overboard is technology. I have many arguments against that, but then again, you would recognize that because I'm biased, I'm a technologist, but we're going to talk more about that as we go along, about why technology should be the point of the spear, not the feathers on the end of the arrow. And there's a lot of opportunity out there for you, especially when you remember that your number one competitor is not this person sitting at this table. Your number one competitor is the resale market, because those are the folks that are moving up. So I just thought that was an interesting.
Yeah.
I appreciate you throwing that in there because it was an interesting one. So you want to talk a little bit about the numbers?
Yeah, sure. And when somebody's in our showroom, 95% of the time they're buying something, and we're able to explain the benefits of obviously what we think is important. But once we have some of those discussions, it becomes evident, pretty clear early on that there's something that buyers want.
Right, that resonates with them.
Resonates with them, absolutely. So,
yes.
And these are just some basic numbers that we pull together, and these are true numbers that we see.
Right. So we've got a few minutes before the end of the session, and I wanted to open it up to some Q&A and see if we can get some discussions going. So you saw some numbers up there. When you look at those numbers, you're all builders, you're thinking to yourself, well, how much did I make in profit on technology in my last house or my last community? How much did I leave on the table, maybe? How many of my buyers, the day after they moved into the house, got on some online shopping site that will remain nameless and bought the technology that they could have had integrated into their home? How many times did you sell smart appliances versus dumb appliances? How many times did you offer smart appliances versus dumb appliances? So if we can open it up to some questions now, we've covered a lot of ground about standards and options. Please, if anybody has a question. Yes, sir.
As an integrator, what kind of support do y'all offer
So-
ongoing for the customer?
Excellent question. So the question is about support. Because I would imagine the number one fear of the builder in this room is whether or not they would be responsible for that technology once it's been installed.
Well, honestly, we failed miserably in the past at
Yeah.
offering tech packages because the day after they close, we get the phone call, or our customer care tech does, asking, how do I set this up or how do I operate?
And I would venture a guess that the reason you failed miserably is because you didn't have the right technology partner. You know, if you've got an electrician doing the work of an integrator, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. But it happens all the time, because let's face it, at the end of the day, these are profit centers. And so you're looking for an opportunity to install technology at a reasonable cost. And I know that sometimes it is distracting that you've got somebody in your office who's like, yeah, I'll throw a couple of wires in the wall. Don't worry about it. We'll be okay. So,
Yeah, and
Please.
great question. And you know, we've been in business 25 years, and we've cut our teeth on the builder business, and we know that there are a few things that are absolutely necessary. We cannot hold the construction of the home. You know, as a low voltage integrator, sometimes we think we're the best and most important thing that a home builder talks to or touches. We know that's not true. So we can't hold up the construction of the home. Surveys are so important, and we know that. We see it. We work with lots of builders that if they don't get a good survey, that's terrible. I mean, it's terrible, period, but certain builders, you know, really hone in on that. And we know that if our name is attached to that survey, we won't be in business. So we do have some white glove service options available. Now, if somebody, if they're buying one of our products and we install it, you know, we do everything we can to make sure that everything goes smooth, and you know, most of the time it does. But we also have a full customer service. We have a tech consultants, you know, on the back end as well, that can answer questions for the homeowner. So we certainly understand the importance of that.
no, and you'll hear more about what I do as the days go on, but you know, we essentially help builders. We actually help builders worldwide. So, yes, sir. So the question is whether or not a finite set of options is better, or do you just open it up and give a very wide array of options?
Without a doubt, and our strategy is really good, better, best. We have very little that's a la carte. It's either A, B, or C, and we do a lot of bundling to make it easier if there are some things that you know, that really resonate to some folks. But absolutely, and even some builders that we work with, when we present the options list, they'll just say no. Let's take that off. And so we work with our builders to make sure that they're on board with what we're offering. But yeah, less is more in those situations for sure. Yep.
Yeah, the ultimate goal obviously is not to confuse your buyer into indecision, right? And so you need to make sure that the packages will work for, let's say, 90% of your buyers. There's always that outlier, because, you know, like I go and buy a house and you don't want to sell a house to me, because I'll tell you the story about Centex that sold me a house 30 years ago and what hell I put them through. But there are, you know, for the vast majority of folks, the 80-20 rule, if you will, right? The good, better, best packages work very well, and you work with your integrator and your marketing folks to understand what those packages are, and you try to color within the lines as best you can. right? There's always a little outlier, but as long as you can color within those lines, it's much easier to put together specific packages. Because the other rule of thumb here, and JC will be the first one to tell you, the number one thing you can never do to a builder is make his house late or fail an inspection. The more custom those packages are, the more chance there is of delay or failure, right? The more specific those packages are, the easier it is to make sure that his guys can go in there and install that stuff in an efficient manner and make sure that he's banging them out and passing his inspections and moving forward so he doesn't affect the closing. Yes, sir. The gentleman says it's an increasingly wireless world. I'm not going to comment. I'm going to let JC answer first because it's actually not. But it's an increasingly wireless world. What are your standard packages? What do you feel are the minimums that should be installed?
Absolutely. So while you're right, living in Texas, we used to wire every window for security. And boy, we thought that was the greatest thing. And we still have a couple builders that do that. But more and more, we're getting away from that. We are going more wireless in certain situations such as that. There are some things out there that are just better wireless. And we understand that, we recognize that, and we see that trend going in that direction. But you still need a hard connection to operate some things for smart TVs, for networking, for Wi-Fi. And those are the things that we really focus on. We focus on networking, on putting WAPs, wireless access points, throughout your house, because we understand the importance of that. And in dealing with families, one thing that we always say is you really do want hard connections for your kids, for their computers, for their gaming. It draws on the Wi-Fi if it's purely Wi-Fi in those situations. So, and then we do a lot of video cameras. We always suggest to go hardwired on those. It's just a cleaner, safer, and more secure connection, not prone to drop off. So there are some things that we focus on wireless, and some other things that we focus on wired.
So I would say that your idea that it's more a wireless world is only true in certain aspects. And so similar to what JC said, there are some things that absolutely can be wireless. Alarm systems, it used to be that you had to wire them. Now alarm systems can all be wireless. To a certain extent, there are a couple of things that you want to wire in a security system as well. Things like keypads and the panels themselves, the cellular radio, you want wired. But just because things are wireless in certain aspects does not mean that you can just delete the wires out of your home. That's doing your home buyer a complete disservice. A couple of Cat 6 drops and a couple of RJ drops in each room don't impact the cost of your home all that much, but will future-proof that home to any type of technology that can come about. Again, remember, you're building something that is going to be around for 50, 60, 100 years. You're not building a car that's going to be around for 3 to 5 and then sold, and then 3 to 5 and then sold, and 3 to 5 and then sold, and then crushed. You're building something for long term. And so you have to think about what we did 15 years ago and how it would be impacted today. Netflix, 15 years ago, Netflix, you got in the mail, right, on a disc. Now you get it from the internet. Just because you get it from the internet doesn't mean that you're getting it wirelessly. It means you're getting it from the internet. And so having that wired infrastructure so that every time somebody is watching a movie in a bedroom, they're not taking down the rest of the network with them, and you're making those networks much more efficient, means that you put some wire in, because every television, even though they all come with Wi-Fi, they come with Wi-Fi for the retrofit, not for the new build construction. Because there's also an RJ45 port on the end of every television as well. Opportunity. So there was somebody, believe it or not, right behind you. So I'm going to let him ask his question, then I'll come to you. Yes, sir. You're doing it all wrong. All right, so the question is, how do you get all of these disparate devices from the various contractors? The thermostat from the HVAC, the light switch from the electrician, the door lock from the locksmith. Okay.
Sure. And one of the topics that we were kind of kicking around was, what is the communication like with the builder? And when we sign up with a builder, we have a full implementation checklist that we go through. And part of that for us is meeting with the home builders to establish what thermostat do they have, what lock do they have, and it's those discussions at the very beginning of talking to them where we give recommendations, not just recommendations. We tell them, if you do this and this and this, it will not work. This is what we recommend. And most builders have, if they're putting in a Honeywell, they can just switch to a different type of Honeywell or whatever it is. A lot of those companies now, talk to different systems, but it's having the conversation up front. And sometimes it's tedious, sometimes it's difficult getting everybody to share that information, but we always say it's much better to have that conversation a month before we start working versus a month after when it isn't working. Right. So having those conversations, having that communication and documenting it and making sure that the integrator knows exactly who they're working with it's vital.
So what we used to do when I was an integrator is before the job got started, we would have a vendor meeting. And we'd bring in all of the disparate people that you just mentioned, right? The HVAC guy, the plumbing guy, you name it. Everybody would come in and we would sit down and we as the integrator would describe to them, okay, we're putting in a smart lock. We're putting in a smart thermostat. We're putting in smart lighting. These are the points that are being replaced. This is the equipment that we will not need from you, and we will work with you to do your plugs out tests, right? Because the HVAC guy, for instance, when they first charge that system, they need a thermostat that they can control locally to do that plugs out and make sure that that system is running properly. Same thing is true of the electrician and everybody else. And so it's important that you find an integrator that's willing to work with the other vendors in order to make sure that their subsystems are working as well. And over time, what would happen is we would then know those vendors from the community. We worked in the state of Florida at the time, and so I knew all of the HVAC contractors and all the plumbers, and because we went from community to community together, and so we had a good working relationship. But it should not be dependent on the builder to make those connections. A good integrator will do that for you. That's the beauty of it.
Just real quick, if it is HVAC, I want to be sure we plug Daikin.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Jason over here.
Talk to Jason, right. Yes, sir, you get the honor of the last question. So the question is, how often a builder should consider refreshing their ABC packages?
Great question.
That's a great question.
For us, we like to do it every quarter. No, just joking.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, no, really. For us, we try to have open dialogue and communication with the builder. But in reality, I would say every couple of years, to do a refresh, to look at what's out there, to make sure, this is technology and it changes quickly. It really does. So if there are some communities, some model homes that we need to update and upgrade, we certainly will do that. But every couple of years is, I would say, do a major
Certainly
overhaul.
Every new community.
Yeah.
We used to do it once a year.
Yeah.
Typically after a major trade show, we would come back with ideas and we'd sit down with the builder and we'd say, okay, this is what we learned. These are some opportunities. But look, you could do it every quarter if you really wanted to. All right, with that, I'd like to thank Daikin once again for their sponsorship of our opening presentation and to our presenter. JC, thank you so much for taking the time and effort to be here.